Welcome back to Filmonomics at Slated. I'm Steph Paterno. Getting good source material seen by the right buyers is a matter of understanding who your buyers are, what their filters are, and really, ultimately, the context in which they receive the material, and the sources from whom they receive this material. Now, in our latest Filmonomics Talks event, we had 3 film financing and packaging experts talk through what their filters are, and how the old studio producers on the lot system no longer applies.
One, I do think it's changing, actually. I do think the nature of what constitutes context used to be like you had to have a producer's office on a lot to be a producer. There are no such things as producers on lots anymore unless they're like you're one of a handful of people, literally a handful of people. Like there used to be a thing that Variety would publish the facts on packs, and it was pages and pages. Like Disney at one point had 60 deals, 60 producer deals. And I'm like, I don't know 60 producers. I mean, you guys, obviously I know all of you except for you in the back. But like, there was an insane amount of people who had context that was given to them by an apparatus that has currently crumbled. And so in place of that, a new apparatus, like a new form of context has to emerge. But I think if we step away from the entertainment, to use your like broad industrial revolution thing, and we go to, we try and approach it that way, I need context for my web browsing. Like I can't, if somebody's like, oh, just go search for something, and there were no Google, like
everything comes to a
honestly, I'm
halt.
making myself sick to my stomach, like just thinking about what that would mean. But so the point is, I think we all need a certain kind of context, but what we can accept is that what's happening today. It's clear that we're all struggling to try to find what is a credible filter for our time and our attention, right? What is it that we can use to sift the wheat from the chaff today when it used to be like, oh, movie studios did that, and that's just the way it worked. Like it used to be an entirely closed system where, your boss, Brian Lord, would pick up the phone and call my boss, Scott Rudin, and say, we're doing this movie. And Scott Rudin would pick up the phone and call Sherry Lansing and say, I have this movie, let's go do this movie. And that was it. You're like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to make a movie. That sounds great. And that system it's like at a very late Roman stage where it still exists kind of, sort of, but not really. But you can see it receding in the distance. It's not what's coming at us. It's what we're leaving behind.
I always think finding it is kind of the hardest part. So I think once you find something and you're really proud of it and you're excited about it, I think the first thing you need to do is make it stand out and putting it out there. And I think packaging, so it's either a director or actor. And I think a lot of times you're going to need a director first, because there was always this phrase that everyone said at CAA, and I think you'll remember it, is like you don't give an artist one color to paint with, so you just don't give them one actor. That's not how you do it. So you want to make sure you give the director the decision to find the actors that they want, so they can express themselves in the way that they want.
The filtering system is a hard thing because there's a especially when you're at a studio, when you're running a studio, you have layers of people that are meant to filter out anything that they can anything unfamiliar. Like, it really, in a funny way, it actually is that. It's like anything where they're not like, oh, well, I got this from this person who's really well-connected. Like, there are so many reasons why people filter stuff out. But, it's easier for me to say when I'm not at a financier, like as a producer, when somebody unfamiliar to me sends something, I don't know if people do this. I find it incredibly irritating, and if you do this, I apologize in advance. I probably get 10 log lines a day from people who just like, hey, I heard of you. Hey, I have this great movie about, my cat who does a thing, and he does it on Mondays, and there's a script. I know you'll love it. Please read it. And I think if I had to spend my day responding, no, thank you, to all of those, I would never, I wouldn't get anything else done.
Yeah.
So in that instance, it really is, in a funny way, finding intermediaries who can create at least the veneer of credibility. It requires somebody, because I couldn't process the rest.
So it's all relational.
Well, at CIA it was like unsolicited material from anyone. So if you didn't know someone, you could always sort of get away with, unless you're coming from someone who I know I'm not going to invest. So, invest my time. But, a lot of times it'll come through directors, or it'll come from someone like, oh, they did this movie, they did that movie, they, I just did this at Sundance, I just did this in the small. I mean, then it kind of changes things a little bit. So
I think that's what you say is an interesting point. It's like you need context. You need some kind of
Yeah.
context. And it turns out, as familiar as we all are with each other now as a function of email, and it's like that's not context enough. The fact that you have my email address does not give you context.
or Facebook, don't do Facebook.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't create that kind of context.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of noise out there, and I think even for everyone out there, it's like if you're going to read something, you have to know that it's coming from somewhere or someone's vouching for it, because if you're reading, 50 scripts a week, that's time away from your family, your friends, the things that you want to do. So you're investing in almost every time-wise. So you have to know there's a reason, oh, if I do this, I'm working with this person or that person, or I know that they have the same work ethic that I do, that they're going to hustle and go after it.
Well, that reminds me of tech investing, which uses a lot of the same proof systems for identifying a signal in the noise. And sometimes that proof system comes in the form of a notable entrepreneur that vouches, or a notable venture capitalist or investor that vouches for a company's credibility. And Slated is essentially the same thing, a marketplace that may help you find the next Scott Rudin that will vouch and become a proof point for your film. Anyway, we'll talk a lot more about that in the next segment. Until then, don't forget to subscribe. See you around.